Hello there. Welcome to Noon Prayer Watch. It's Friday. The weekend is here. Shabbat Shalom. Hope y'all had a good week. This is Jacob coming to you from Japan. Thank you for watching this broadcast. Thank you for tuning in or catching up on the replay later. Anytime you participate with us, stand with us, pray with us, we very much appreciate it. Thank you for your support and your love and your encouragement. This is Noon Prayer Watch. We are here on the wall, watching, praying, discussing what is happening in our communities, cities, nations, and planet. I have some personal things, like a testimony, I guess you could say, to talk about today. And I was going to talk about it last week, but the topic and the timing didn't really work out. So I moved it to this week. And I'm kind of glad I did, because something also happened yesterday and I could add on to what I wanted to say in the first place. But before we get into that, I just want to give a quick shout out to the news, what's happening in the nations right now. Please pray for the nations. Lots of things are up in the air. We're only 9 days into 2026. Lots of things are happening. I'm sure you've seen, of course, the news. The big ticket item is Venezuela. After lots of taunting and belligerent behavior, the president of Venezuela, Maduro, he was captured. It's kind of rare. You just go in and capture the leader and everybody in the nation's happy. I did it's a crazy military maneuver accomplishment. It seems none of the U.S. Special Forces that went in there to get Maduro none of them, no casualties were suffered. Most of the Cuban bodyguards of Maduro, which means, he was probably a puppet being controlled by other people. They were all taken out, didn't even know what hit them. And it's just crazy how skilled and how America's military is so able to do something like that. And it seems like that's not where it is going to end. Other things are happening right now. I saw reports, I don't know the details of this, but it seems that President Trump has announced that there will be bombing and action in Mexico against the cartels there. There is, of course, another big item happening right now is, I talked about Somaliland last week, but across the Gulf of Aden, I believe it's called, south of the Red Sea, in Yemen. Yemen has been in a civil war for a long time right now, at the behest, of course, of Iran. And South Yemen, one of the sections, has seceded and declared independence, and we have the UAE and Saudi Arabia, of course, meddling in all of that. So that being said, South Yemen seems to be, I haven't done my reading on this yet, I will probably in the future. South Yemen seems to be kind of like Somaliland, going to be the state that's going to be more stable and going to align with more stable countries. So pray there. If that happens and America, Israel, other nations have more influence in that area, that's going to lead to more stability, less piracy. That's going to put pressure on China, because trade that comes from the Suez Canal will, of course, there will be pressure put on them. And how does that work exactly? That's just how geopolitics works in general. But the other big ticket item is Israel, Lebanon, and Iran. Seems to be lots of drama happening in Iran right now. I'm seeing, videos of government buildings being set on fire. The Shah of Iran and, the leader in exile of the former regime, has been calling on people to revolt. And the Islamic Republic government of Iran has shut down the internet, so we don't really know 100% what is actually happening. I've heard also ISIS, the branch in Afghanistan, that side is attacking both the Iranian government and civilians because of Islamic internal civil war, as ISIS just wants to kill and destroy everybody and take over the world. They're just absolute, the top level of chaotic entity there. And they're just the Iranian government is Shia, is a different sect, like Protestant, Catholic. And for Sunni extremists like ISIS, that's the number one enemy. If you don't believe what we believe, you're an apostate, you have to die first, kind of an attitude is happening there. We saw that a lot in Syria and Iraq when ISIS first rose up, and they have that same mentality now. This is rumors, though. We don't know if they're 100% confirmed, but don't be surprised if they turn out to be true. There's also a lot of interesting things happening in the world right now. Gambling is one of them, and there is a site very famous. I don't think I should mention it because it's not really important, but they take bets on things that are going to happen. For example, the press secretary for Donald Trump, I forgot her name, sorry. People were placing bets on will she finish her press conference within 60 minutes, and so people bet on it. Is going to go over, is going to go under, and she finished, just like right at the mark, and so somebody made a lot of money because of that. Really kind of insane, but that's just where we're at right now. People like to do that, and I'm saying all of this because there are people who bet on Israel doing military actions, and certain accounts that are 100% right are betting that something's going to happen on January 31st. Now, because that's happening, maybe the Israeli government might change something. We don't know. But something this month could happen, so we need to pray. We saw after the Venezuela military maneuver, kinetic action, it's what the government likes to call it. We saw a lot of U.S. assets moving towards the Middle East, moving towards Europe and Israel and Iran. So something could be cooking. We'll see. Please pray for victory, pray for evil regimes to fall. We have been praying a long time for the Islamic Republic of Iran to fall. Islam is not the religion of Iran. The people there don't actually like it. They're just forced to live under the thumb of extremists because they took over. They worked with the communists and took over, then killed all the communists and kept power for themselves, and they've done a job in maintaining power this whole time, but it seems like that could be coming to an end right now. We'll see what happens. So we just pray for evil to fall, revival to come to that land. Iran used to be a very strong friend of the West, a friend of Israel, but since the extremists took over, things have changed. And so we could see a reversal of that here in the future. And that's going to change a lot of things in the Middle East, because Iran and like Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states they've been, and I've talked about this a lot before, they've been in a kind of cold war, civil war between the Shia and the Sunni sects over control over the Middle East. And, someone's always trying to take control of the Muslim world, especially in that area. It's been in the past, it's been, Egypt. Saddam Hussein of Iraq tried to be that guy. Nobody, of course, went along with that and fought wars against him. And so if you take Iran completely out, you take that Islamic Republic completely out of take it off the chessboard, off the game board, so to speak, there's going to be a vacuum there, and it's going to be hard to manage that because Iraq's chaotic, Syria is still a little chaotic, and what is Saudi, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, what are they going to do? Pakistan too, Afghanistan, Taliban over there. Okay, so that's something you need to pray for. And as more develops, I don't really have much to say about this, but as it develops, we might address that here. Other people, Pastor Tim and others, might address that as well. So we'll keep our ear to the ground and listen, and we will be praying, watching on the wall, so to speak. So talked a lot about that, more than I had intended, and that's okay. Next topic, the topic of today, is titled The Reality of the Love of God. And over this New Year holiday, if you want to call it that, it's a big holiday here in this country, I spent time with my in-laws, my family here, and I've mentioned this before in the past, but one thing my in-laws do is they host foster children. They work with the government, and if some child, the parents are not, it's not like completely foster care, but sometimes it is. Like the intention is, of course, for the child to go back to their parents if they can at one point. And so sometimes kids will stay, for a week, for a month or whatever. But we have in our family's house one girl who's been there for over a year. I talked about her last year. I believe I talked about how I was a bit crabby, a bit Scroogey, if you will call it that, about Christmas. And last year was also just really stressful for a lot of different reasons. One, just having a child and all of that. That was a lot to take in. But I was really last year. Last year I was really like convicted. I was checked by the Holy Spirit, like just. I don't really think I've always been conscious of the idea of, don't take things for granted. I've always tried my best not to take things for granted. I don't think I've completely taken for granted Christmas and the holidays and family time and all of that. But when I saw this girl who has never experienced that, should never experience it because that's not the culture of this nation. If she were with her, birth family, would never do this. Although they're starting to start a little bit with the presents or whatever it is in a simple manner. But the meal and the party and the exchanging of presents and the big Christmas tree, she never experienced that. And a lot of people get religious about this sort of stuff. I talked about that a couple weeks ago. But at the end of the day, it is a time families can come together, spend time together, and express love to each other. Usually through spending time, of course, but also through giving gifts. And what's interesting is in this country, giving gifts is very difficult because if you give somebody something, they're going to pay you back. Like this idea of unconditional, like giving, never expecting anything in return is not exactly a cultural thing here. People here got to be even Steven. They got to be, you can't owe anybody anything. And there are some good parts to this concept, but there's also some bad parts because, like, you can't just freely give somebody something and not expect anything in return. Because, like, I know if I give somebody something, they're gonna at least write me a card or something. They're going to show through an action that they acknowledge and they received and are thankful for whatever you gave. And I say all this because sometimes when you try to give people things, it's kind of like, they know they're obligated culturally to return it, and maybe they don't want to do it. So you got to be careful with what you give. I always tell people give perishable food items because they can just eat it, and if they don't like it, they can toss it. And that's a big industry and a big cultural part of this country here. And so, but especially with kids aren't ever given anything really, like especially big presents. And so sometimes you try to give a child a bottle of tea or something, and they're like, why are you giving this to me? They're strangers, from their family or whatever, okay, from mom and dad, fine, but like from someone who's not related to them, it's kind of weird. And so we had the party last year, and then we had this party again this year, and there's this little girl, she's 5 years old, and she's been staying with my in-laws for over a year now, and I don't know how much longer she'll be there, but she was there last year. She received presents last year, and it was a little awkward because she doesn't, that's never something she ever has experienced, didn't know what to do. And so when I got there, I went, and if you watched me last week, I was in a different place than where I am now. I'm here at my home in Osaka right now. And so when I got there, we're setting up, preparing everything, and she was like, what's going on? Which I'm like, I guess you don't remember what happened last year. Okay. And I told her we're going to have a Christmas party. We're going to have a Christmas party, and we're going to, eat and have snacks and have it. We have this tree here. We have presents. We're going to give presents to each other and all that. And she was like, am I invited to that? Can I participate in that? I'm like, yeah, of course you can. You were here last year, remember? But she was like really, it was kind of sad. Her reaction was really, I guess sad is the only word. She was like, not disappointed, but just like downcast. Like she felt, she's only 5 years old, but I felt like she felt like she didn't deserve it. And it's not something that's right. That's something that she should be getting. And it was like, oh, it kind of broke my heart. And so then when we had, it was I think Christmas evening, we didn't do it on the morning, we did it in the evening, I think. Because my family had the fever, and we had to get through all that. that being said, when we did the Christmas exchange, we gave her presents. We had some friends that gave her some presents that know her, and presents from us, presents from my father and mother-in-law. And like every single present we gave her, she was just like looking down, couldn't look us in the eye, like ashamed, I guess is the right word, and didn't seem happy at all to receive any of the things that we gave her. Of course, she was happy, just didn't express it at that moment. And it just like, there's just this shame on her. She's only 5 years old. And it's like, there's all these negative emotions that the culture puts on her is coming out and expressing itself. And of course, those of us that, we read the Bible. Where's my Bible? Back here. My big orange pumpkin Bible here. When we read the Bible, it has words in it about not being ashamed, about receiving gifts, about the Father giving us gifts, all those sorts of things. And that is an expression of the love of God. And we read the Bible, we believe it. And those of us that grow up in a Christian society, in a good, healthy community, we can maybe take that for granted. We know there's families, foster kids, and broken families where people aren't living and abiding by these principles, and things are really hard. Some of you might have experienced that, unfortunately. But for me, I have been so blessed. I have a mother and a father who loved me and who are always together, and I know what I had. I try my best not to take it for granted. And I was growing up in a house of love and of encouragement. My family, my friends' family, other mentors in the church always built me up. And so I had the advantage of having higher self-esteem than some other people, less anxiety, less shame, all of these positive, fruits of the Spirit and other kinds of things. But I've been very blessed to being raised in that sort of environment. And this girl has not had any of that, not even just a normal standard family here, because of her family situation. There's been, physical, not so much physical abuse, but emotional abuse, definitely spiritual abuse as well. But emotional abuse is especially, or neglect, this orphan spirit, even though her parents are still alive. And she's been with the family for so long, we're starting to see changes. We're starting to see growth. We're starting to see fruit, because she has, because of the situation she's in, like when we talk about loving children, loving whatever, even plants, there's scientific evidence where if you speak positive, I've seen Japanese TV programs that have nothing to do with religion. They do experiments on plants, green leaf plants, and they did an experiment. They had 3 of them, and then they had one every day. Somebody went and said positive things to it, one nothing, and then the third one they said negative things to it. They called it idiot, and I'm not going to say all the words. One big insult in Japan is calling someone bald, like you don't have hair. And so they wrote down what they said to the plant every day, and they called the plant bald, like old baldy or something like that. And that's a very common insult here. I don't know why, but that's just the culture. But I'm imagining someone looking at a plant, you bald bad plant, whatever, I'm it's kind of, plants don't exactly have hair. I don't know how it's going to take that. Anyway, the point is, they showed the plant that spoke positively to was healthy and strong. The middle one was, okay. And the one negative words were spoken to was withering, and it wasn't doing very well. And again, this is a secular, as far as I know, TV program doing all of this. And even the world that doesn't understand this completely recognizes that there's truth and the power of the tongue, and in love and in encouragement and things like that. Excuse me. So this girl, we're starting to see changes in her. Because of the situation she's in, she has a hard time growing, has intestinal problems and things like that, hormonal problems, and really tough situation. But we're starting to see growth. We're starting to see more intelligence, a better attitude, all of these sorts of things. And it's just I grew up in this, and I not really a little bit I have, but I've not really encountered people who have just had no encounter with the love of God and a Christian community and things like that. Because America, especially in the South, in Louisiana and Shreveport Christian Center, where I'm from, we have a strong community there, and it's really good. And coming to a nation here where we don't have that necessarily, there's a lot of negative aspects to the culture here. When we apply these principles to this nation, and it's completely different. They think differently, they speak differently, they have different values, but you apply this 1,000-year-old plus 2,000, 3,000-year-old book, the principles in here, you see growth, and you see the power of God moving on people. You see that this is real. Of course we know it's real. We have faith that it's real, but when you see it with your own eyes, that's a miracle. You think, oh, okay, you say nice things to someone and there's a positive result, but that's fruit. That's evidence that this is real. And I know it's real, but I love seeing it. And I love seeing, I'm not like, when we talk about, there's people who are really like knowledgeable, logical, and rational. And then there's people who are like all about faith, and they don't worry about all of that kind of stuff. I'm the former category. I need to be around more spiritual people to help remind me that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. The natural is subservient to the supernatural, obviously. And sometimes I need people to remind me of that, because I get so caught up in what's happening in front of my eyes. And of course I have faith and I believe in all of this. I believe in the supernatural, but it's just great sometimes to see it happen right before my eyes. And so this girl, my in-laws they're in their 60s. So they're kind of like, the relationship is similar to like grandparents. And they even call her that, granddad, grandmom in Japanese. And when it comes to men, 20, 30, 40-year-old men in her life, father-ish figures, me and mother figures as well, my wife and I are kind of like the only sort of influence like that in her life. I'm not like taking the place of her parent or anything like that. I'm only there, a couple of weeks out of the year. But it's just, when I'm there, she is so clinging to me, always wanting to be with me. And my wife is like, I don't know why that girl likes you. You're so mean to her. And I'm not mean to her. I'm just, not stern, not strict, but stern, Don't always give them what they want. Don't always placate them. You got to be, strong or whatever. Got to be stern. And it was funny because I go to church on Sunday, and she wants to go with me. It's just across the way. It's really the house that my family lives in is next door to the church. And so I took my daughter, and then she really wanted to go with me. And so we went to church, and she was just on me, on my leg, holding my hand, sitting in my lap the entire service. She has, like a lot of kids, really fidgety, always moving around, gets bored in church or whatever. And usually there's a kid's room. She'll go back in the kid's room and play. And so when the service started, I wasn't doing anything. I was just sitting in the audience with her next to me. She brought up her little chair next to me, and she was like, "Can we go to the kids' room and play?" And I was like, "I don't know, maybe later. I don't know. We're gonna stay in here for now. Stay here and worship and all of that." But then during the service, I was like, "Don't take her back there. Just stay there." I felt the Lord told me that, like, show her what someone who believes in me looks like. Like, you're in a church, you're worshiping, you're listening, you're sitting quietly, being an example of her. Other people are doing that too, but I have an opportunity to influence her. And so I did that. And even though she's really fidgety and moving around, going under my chair, on her chair, all this sort of stuff, she didn't leave me, and she didn't go out and play or whatever like she normally does. And I just was so blessed that, I never would have imagined that God would use me in this way. And, it's one person, of course, but that's ministry. That one person, that, what we're doing, what that community where my family and my in-laws live, what they're doing is they're planting seeds in her. And she might probably will go back to her family at one point once she's more capable of taking care of herself, going to school by herself and all of that. They go to school by themselves very early in this country. And it's just, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know if we'll see her again. We don't know if she'll keep it connected, especially when you're a kid. It's kind of hard to do that. But we have an opportunity to plant seeds in her. I don't know if she's smart enough to understand salvation and all that kind of stuff. We tell her, we're worshiping and talking about Jesus all the time. But when will her faith blossom? I don't know. But the time that we have with her, we plant seeds. And that's really a way, if you are thinking about how to be an evangelist, how to evangelize, how to spread the gospel, you, of course, if they're rational of age and know what they're saying, you can tell them about the gospel. But if they're kids, you don't manipulate them. You don't try to scare them or whatever. You just love them. And you shine your light, the light of Christ from within you. Let it shine on them. Be a good example to them. Spend time with them. Give them gifts, all these sorts of things. And you never know what's going to happen, how they're going to turn out in the future. And it was just, I was like, God, I'm so thankful that I have this opportunity for you to use me this way, even if it's just one little girl in this nation. And there's as most of you know, I used to be a teacher. I've taught hundreds of kids. There's a few I'm teaching now, and I'm pouring into constantly. And it's just so encouraging. I've been doing it for a while now, over 10 years. And so some of these kids that I spend so much time, so much stress, and sometimes for some of these kids, I keep in touch with them and I meet them sometimes and I see how their lives turned out, and it's really impressive. Sometimes they're on fire for the Lord. I have a couple of boys who are on fire for God, that they're not from Christian homes, but I don't know, something just clicked within them, and they keep coming back. They keep coming, spending time with us. A lot of them go to America and study, so their English is really well. But when they come back and visit family, they come see us on Sunday, and it's just really encouraging. And that's a very small percentage of all of the students that I've taught in the past, but it's so encouraging to see how they're doing. They're growing. They're in university. They're some of them going to medical school and getting master's degrees and getting jobs. And I don't know if anybody's gotten married yet. That's going to be kind of scary for some of them. I knew you when you were this tall. But I'm going to end this by saying something happened yesterday. And yesterday I went to the train station to take a train into town, and I was there on the platform, and out of the corner of my eye, I was in a rush because I was kind of late for the train. I was on time though. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw a young, short person, looking at me, and he started walking towards me, and I'm like, oh boy. There's a lot of people on the platform. And I was like, why is this guy coming to me? And I look to him, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know this guy. He had a suit on, and he had a really cool hairdo, and he's like, Jacob Sensei, that's what they call me here. Jacob Sensei, do you remember me? And I'm like, I think I know who you are, but you're so grown up and you have cool hair and you look way different and you're so sharp with your suit. And he's like, and he told me his name. And I'm like, oh, of course you. Wow, you are, way different. And I was like, man, I thought you were like a businessman or something. He was still a high school student. And, they wear nice uniforms here. And I was like, wow, okay, this is crazy. And this is a boy that I taught. I never taught him in an actual classroom, but at my old teaching job, I was the guy, if we had a student who had zero English, because I can speak Japanese, if they knew zero English, I would do private lessons with them to help catch them up with everybody else in their main classes. And this kid, I taught from 1st grade to 5th grade every single week. So I don't know, a couple of hundred times, 200, maybe 300 times, I talked with him. And the first 2 years were HE double hockey stick. This kid had a bad attitude, wouldn't sit still. When he was in the 1st grade, I spent an hour every week getting him just to write A through Z. 1 hour. It took him 1 hour to do that because he would want to get up and do all this sort of stuff and couldn't sit still. And always wanted to talk and yell and fight me. And, we tussled a little bit, but because boys got to get that energy out, But that alone, those 5 years really tried me. Especially at the end of the 2nd year, I was about to give up. I was about to ask my boss, I don't want to teach this kid anymore. It's just so hard, and it's not worth the stress. But then at the end of the 2nd grade year, he changed, and then he slowly started getting better, 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year. And he's very opinionated, very strong. a kid. He wasn't the worst kid in the school, but he got in trouble a lot. He got yelled at a lot by students. Went to the principal's office a lot. That kind of a kid. And I feel like he had faith though at the end of the day in God, because one time, I think third grade or so, we're studying, and he turns to me and he says, "Jacob Sensei, people who don't believe in God they're idiots. They're so stupid." He started insulting like non-believers. I'm like, whoa, okay. Well, I'm glad. I mean, please don't be negative, but I'm glad you feel that it is foolish to not believe in God. And so I say all of this to say, I met him on the train station, and we rode the train together into town. So I got to talk with him for about 20, 30 minutes on the train, just catching up, what you doing, all that kind of stuff. And, he had struggles in school, but he overcame them. By the time he was fourth grade, fifth grade, he was a pretty good student, even though he was still, really aggressive. And he eventually left our school and went to a public school, and he's about to graduate high school to go to university, which his family seems very surprised that he was able to do that. I knew he was smart the whole time, of course, I taught him so many years, but, so like, he was just telling me about all of his friends that he went to school with. Some of the ones that I didn't get to really talk with or spend time with necessarily, they caused a lot of trouble. And, they're in high school now, and unfortunately some of them not living good lives, living good lifestyles, dropping out of school in high school. In Japan, tattoos and piercing is like really, really negative. It's like you're choosing a different lifestyle, not the straight and narrow kind of a lifestyle. And so he kept saying, yeah, this kid, he was doing that kid's doing that. And I'm like, oh no, really? Oh, okay. Because, they're not going to finish high school, maybe not going to go to university, not going to get a decent job. You got to have university here to get a good job. And it's just like, I also, on this topic of the reality of the love of God, I don't know how strong this kid's faith is. And he said he wanted to reconnect with me at some point, and maybe we'll see what happens there. But I'm seeing fruit there. And I asked him, I was like, "Are you gonna do that kind of a lifestyle?" And he's like, "No. I'm a normal person. I'm not gonna do all that." And I don't think he will. But like, something is keeping him on the path that took his friends a different way, that he loves and he really looks up to. And it was just, I pray that myself and all of the other teachers that poured into him, spent so much time teaching him, planting seeds in him, that we're seeing fruit there. And I hope to meet him and other kids like him that I've talked with in the past in the future. But that's just another sort of small testimony. I'm seeing his path not going way off rails here. He's going straight as far as a normal person in this country can be. And it was a blessing. And it's just, like I said, it's cool. The reality of the love of God. The love of God is real. Of course, we believe in it, but it's great to see it. So look for those opportunities in your life. Look for people who you've poured into your life, because you need to be encouraged, honestly. And also, if you have a testimony, share it with other people, because testimonies is a great way to encourage other people to build faith up in other people. This stuff is real, y'all. If you don't believe it, if you're a kind of logical, rational person, and I'm not saying that to brag, because I don't see the spiritual side of things sometimes, and I miss stuff sometimes. And I need those kind of people in my life, leaders, pastors, and things like that, to help me see the bigger picture. If you're like me, you will see evidence. You will see fruit if you keep at it. And the people in your life, you might not see fruit quickly, but plant seeds, because it might take 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Who knows? You're not responsible for that other person. You're just responsible for the time, the opportunities, the open doors that you have to influence and impact people with the gospel for the kingdom. And loving other people, letting your light shine forth, whether they're young, whether they're old, is how we advance the kingdom. One small way we do that. So, that being said, that's all I got to talk to you guys about today. Thank you for watching up until this point. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, interact with our stuff. It helps this ministry. It might be a small way, but it's help. And if you would like to give an offering, donate to us, you can download the CCS app in the Apple App Store or Android Google Play Store. Is that what they use? Some of you guys might use that. Be blessed. Have a great weekend. remember always to bring order to chaos. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.